Hello folks, hope everything is going well where you are. It is time for some more 40k rantage. I gave you guys the option a few days ago now to tell me what video we were going to do next in 40k rants. There were lots of things to go over, which is awesome. You had three choices, one of which was, are Warhammer fans ungrateful? The second was, should you ever feel shame for playing Warhammer? And number three was, characters should die more often in Warhammer 40,000. And with 51% of the vote, characters should die more often in Warhammer 40,000 won, which I'm very, very, very happy about, because this is something I've actually wanted to cover for quite some time. So, these are all subjects from back in the day, a few years ago, and we re-examine them every few years to see if everybody's opinions have changed. Mine certainly have, in some ways. I've come down on Games Workshop side in some ways and not in others. But anyway, let's move on, shall we? If you like what I do, if you like the way that my brain works, because I have to say, this video is unscripted. I have a few bullet points, but mostly unscripted. If I stammer, if I lose my train of thought, I'll try and get back to it, because my brain works in a very strange way. If you like how it works, because some of you do, then like the video, subscribe to the channel. It really does help me out when we do videos like this. Alright, 40k rantage. 40k characters should die more often. There are a few main reasons why that's the case, and I'll cover them all here, but the first is that there are no stakes, in my opinion, in Warhammer 40,000. It's kind of pointless picking up a Warhammer 40,000 book. Again, this is not a new problem. 40k has had this happen to it. It's had this kind of issue for years, for decades now, where characters just don't die, right? They'll come together, they'll fight, and then they'll give like a grudging nod of respect, and then they'll leave in opposite directions, right? This has been going on for a long time. The problem is, it's been going on for so long that in the year 2025, the problem is so compounded, and again, for the first time ever in my opinion, it's not worth picking up Warhammer 40,000 novels, because you know how they're gonna, you know no one's gonna die. Okay? Unless they don't have a model. If they don't have a model, that all bets are off. If they have a model, you can just skip their chapters. They're going to talk about how cool they are, and then they're going to get on with it, kind of a thing. You can kind of skip their chapters and just get on with whatever it is that you're doing that day, right? Again, that's an extreme example, I know, but that's just kind of how it is, you know what I mean? I'm going to take a quick sip of my coffee before moving on. Alright, I'm back. Sorry about that. And not only was I drinking from my coffee, but I noticed that there was a spider crawling along my desk. I don't mind spiders. I think they're just completely fine around me. But, like, it is very distracting watching it, like, do its little dance in the bottom left of my vision. Anyway, yeah. I don't think there's that much point to buying 40k books myself. Literally because when I see a character with a name, I know kind of how this story is going to end. It'll end with them doing something cool, and then nodding to the other characters in the book, then going their own separate ways, right? There are no stakes in 40k. You know for a fact that two characters dueling it out will result in some fabricated reason for them to just stop, call it a draw, and walk away wounded, but with honour, satisfied. I'm sure you can all pick out 2 to 3 duels off the top of your head where this has happened in a 40k novel. Not just Space Marines, but Necron Catan shards, Eldar, you know, main characters, all these other people who just don't die. Nothing ever happens to them, unless you're a jobber without a model. If so, then those are the more exciting novels. Those are the ones I suggest you pick up. Games Workshop, in my opinion, do this out of a fear of their models being devalued in any way whatsoever. Why would they be devalued? Just for dying in a novel or losing a fight in a novel? They do not trust their fan base to have the emotional intelligence to like a model line or character because they lost a fight or actually died in the setting, you know? They don't trust you to like them despite the fact that they've lost or that they've died and are not part of the setting anymore. I would say, though, the Horus Heresy kind of completely disproves this, as it has a rabid, albeit smaller, fan base who love the game despite its conclusions. Winners, losers, and survivors are already known in that setting, right? They already know that Sanguinius dies, but Blood Angels players still love putting him on the tabletop and painting him up, right? The counter-argument here, though, is that the fanbase for Horus Heresy is not like the modern 40k fanbase. That is a misnomer, and it's often thrown around, and it's not true. They are nothing like 40k players. The Horus Heresy fanbase is a fanbase of dedicated wargamers who respect the law as next to sacrosanct. These are historical wargamers. It just so happens that their historical wargame takes place in a fictional setting. I know those of you out there who know what historical wargamers are like, right? They treat their law as sacrosanct. They treat everything needs to be as it was in real life. In real life of Horus Heresy players is in the novel. So if somebody died in the novels, then they're dead in the game. That's just how it is. You just have to get on with it. And you know what? The other thing is here, I've heard other gamers from Horus Heresy say this. Mac has said this before in the past. Sometimes the limitations of a character are far more interesting than the cool stuff they do. Argel Tal is more interesting because you know he doesn't make it. Right? You know he doesn't make it. You want to right that wrong. You want him in your force to do that if you're a word bearers player. Okay? Or you maybe even want to change history, sort of a thing. The reason why people don't find Erebus that interesting, he's more infuriating, and the reason why people don't really like Lucius the Eternal, because just that, they never are allowed to just die, to take a defeat so bad that they aren't in the setting anymore, or they're left behind. They're never allowed to do that, they're always just there. Whenever Erebus turns up, you know the author is just going to wank him off, as he usually does, and then send him on his merry way without any sort of repercussions whatsoever. You know that's going to happen. Any scene he turns up in, you just roll your eyes and skip the scene. That's awful. Especially in 40k lore too. Even in codexes, when certain characters turn up, you know nothing's going to happen to them. You're not going to get any sort of new lore for them, so you may as well just skip that bit and get to the rules. Again, we are chipping away at the foundations of Warhammer 40,000 lore and how cool it can be by not trusting our audience to have the emotional maturity to handle changes like this as we move on. Games Workshop, though, might have a point here, in my opinion. Because you can see the meme-laden landscape that is 40k, the absolute drivel that comes from fan message boards and forums, the frothing rage people get, including me, when their favourite faction does not get new models when others do. Can you imagine a fanbase like this being told that one of their favourite characters lost a fight cleanly, or that they even died in a setting somewhere, right? In a book somewhere? Can you imagine the rage? Would it even be worth it? You know, I often equate 40k to wrestling, and that's why. In wrestling, if you're going to give a wrestler a clean loss, it's really hard to do that and like preserve their status in the eyes of the fans. But in my opinion, that kind of devalues the fans. It kind of says you don't insult you don't like respect their intelligence. You think they're like 3-year-olds who say, "Oh, this guy lost once, so he's immediately sucks. He's immediately awful. That's it. We don't like him," right? That's not true. That just isn't true. In fact, some of the wrestlers who've gotten over the most over the past few years have been underappreciated dudes who never seem to get the limelight. They always seem to lose. They always seem they're used to put over the new big guy, right? And those guys are often the most appreciated by the fans. They want to cheer for them. They want them to be pushed, right? Same thing goes for 40k characters. Wrestling and 40k, and I will die on this hill, are very, very, very similar. Time for a sip of tea. Yeah, so they're very, very, very similar. Extremely so, in my opinion. Almost to the point that it's kind of ridiculous, but there we go. I have an example about this, by the way. I actually have a die-in-the-wool example of Games Workshop doing this. Games Workshop did recently kill off a character for good, apparently, right? Now, I still think they don't have the balls to stick this landing. I don't think they'll stick with their decision. I think they will reverse it in time, right? But Games Workshop did recently kill off a character. Can you name who it was? It was a big one. Can you name it? I'm going to be in chat for this video. I'll be looking at the chat to see who names the name. It's not a Space Marine, of course, and it's not Chaos related, of course, or even Xenos related. No, it's Commissar Yarrick. They killed him off screen, but he is canonically dead from their own, from the horse's mouth, from Games Workshop themselves. And what army does Commissar Yarrick belong to? The dad historical wargamer army, the Imperial Guard. Guys who, by and large, will accept law decisions because their faction is basically made to die gloriously, and they respect the sanctity of the law even if they disagree with it. In other words, they're very much like historical wargamers and Horus Heresy players. The one faction Games Workshop had the balls to go after, the only one, was Imperial Guard. It was a calculated decision to get rid of Yarrick. Why? Because they don't want anything but power-armoured Space Marines on both sides being the centre mass attention seekers of things like the Armageddon campaign. If you like Imperial Guard, I am extremely sorry, but you no longer matter in 40k in regards to what Games Workshop want the setting to be, right? They know Space Marines sell, they know Chaos sells, they know those two fighting each other sells, everything else on the Imperium side can go suck a dick. And I'm sorry, I don't agree with that. I think that's nonsense. I love the Imperial Guard, but guys, Imperial Guard are not even the main characters in their own campaign. Armageddon. The Steel Legion. They live there, dude. Are they in the new campaign set? No. No. Dude, Grey Knights are hardly in that set. What is in that set? Power-armoured normal dudes of the Space Wolves and Chaos Space Marine variety. That's it. Games Workshop do not trust the majority of us to actually be able to handle a setting with clear wins and losses for characters. They don't. Armies you can give a loss to every now and then, and even then they're quite rare. You know, clean losses. I don't mean losses with a mechanical, oh, that only happened because XYZ. No, 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 no. Again, wrestling does this all the time. All the time. Me and the missus just watched an event last night where every single match had a what we call a sticky finish, right? No, that sounds really bad. No, didn't have a sticky finish. That sounds awful. Although we did call it that last night, but like, let's call it an unclean finish, right? It's not clean. Basically, you have two wrestlers in the ring, they're fighting it out, but the company wants to protect both wrestlers, so instead of giving one a clean victory over the other, they'll have the bad guy cheat to win. Right? Now that's okay if it happens once in a show, but guys, there were like 5 or 6 matches last night, and in 5 or 6 of those matches, they all had these screwy finishes, because WWE didn't have the balls to just stick to what they were doing and give somebody a win and somebody else a loss. They didn't have the balls to do it. Right? And you can pull that once or twice, and your fans will go along with you, because they can see, hey, they're telling a wider story in here. But if you do that 5 or 6 times in a row, people start to expect shittiness. Right? By the time we got to the main event of this show, people were already booing. Like they were booing, they were preemptively booing the main event because they could sense it coming. They were like, yeah, there's going to be a screwy finish because they're not going to let these two, one just take an L and one just win, right? And they paid good money to get in, and now they're regretting it, so they're starting to get annoyed with it. Same thing, are you correlating this to 40k novels, right? Same thing goes with 40k novels. Their sales are down. Go check them out. And there's a reason for that, dude. I'm telling you now, the main reason for that is because there are no stakes in 40k novels, especially not when Space Marines are concerned. It is what it is. Alright? Armies, as I said, you can give a loss to, even though they're quite rare. But a character is a very personal experience for people, right? People invest in them. It takes a writer with conviction and balls to put their characters through meaningful trials and tribulations. Again, Maka said this about Horus Heresy, right? The reason why a lot of these Horus Heresy characters are so beloved is because they don't make it. They don't survive the war. They go down fighting. But in that, they're way more interesting. Right? Because you only get a set amount of time with them, but you want to know more about them. And you look at every single decision that brought them to their end and think, what if it was different? Why did they make those decisions? Well, they made those decisions because they're characters, dude. They're characters with meaningful thoughts and motivations that brought them to a heroic and probably grisly end in the end of the story. When you have characters that never die, that never suffer, that never go through the ringer, you have uninteresting characters that aren't worth reading about. Whether it be in a novel, or a campaign book, or a codex, whatever. It doesn't matter. And Games Workshop don't seem to understand this. And they don't respect your intelligence. But on the flip side, when we look at the wider state of the hobby right now, remember that video I did a while ago when I said, 40k is becoming more tribal, and that's like bad. That's really bad, right? It's becoming a lot more toxic. This is what I mean. The reason why they can't do this kind of thing with their games and with their characters is because of the sheer bitching and backlash that they will get as things go on. Can you imagine killing off Ragnar Blackmane? Can you imagine killing off Marneus Calgar? Both of those characters should be dead. Right? And they would be far more beloved, even by people beyond their own factions. Dude, if Calgar actually died, I'd respect that so much. I'd be like, dude, that guy's a hero. That guy did so much for the Imperium, and now he's dead. Well, do you know what? I'm gonna get myself an Ultramarines kill team. Cause fuck that, man. I like Calgar now. He went down like a man, god damn it. And yeah, absolutely. Let's do this. Let's fight for Ultramar, right? At the moment, I think Ultramarines are the most boring thing on the face of the earth. Can't stand them. Just do my head in. Can't stand it, right? Every single video game's about them. Calgar comes in. Again, it happened in the video game, the Space Marine video game. Calgar arrives and well, we're not losing, are we? No one's going to die now because Calgar's here. He never loses. He never dies, right? This is what I mean. If you give these people honest-to-God losses and you even kill some of them off, their models will sell more, I believe. I have a slightly more faith in the 40k fandom than Games Workshop does. Again, I understand their motivations. I understand that sometimes, the community can be extremely toxic and is averse to change. I get that, right? I'm not sitting here waxing lyrical about how Games Workshop are always the bad guy in this video. Listen, sometimes we're the bad guys. Sometimes we can't take change. We go on message boards. Sometimes we even harass people. Like, what are you doing? About toy soldiers? What? Sometimes we even harass people about law changes that we don't like, that kind of a thing. So I can't really put it beyond Games Workshop to be like, listen, we don't want that in our in-feed. So, we'll have Calgar fight Lucius the Eternal and nobody wins, right? Again, Abaddon fighting Celestine. Nobody won, nobody lost, right? Everyone walked away, well, I'll get you next time, that kind of a thing. It's simpler to do that. And the books still are selling. They're not selling as much as they used to, but they're still selling. So as long as that's going on, why would they give a shit? But there is another problem here. We have a massively bloated model space right now for Ultramarines in particular. We could cull 75% of their characters, the Ultramarines characters, and hardly anybody would notice. You could kill off 75% of the Ultramarines characters, and even Ultramarines play would go, wait, that guy was still alive? Oh, okay. Well, he's dead now. Cool. Alright. No one would care. But there are no stakes in 40k lore anymore. You know what you're getting when you open the fucking book. Everybody punches each other, they shook hands, and they moved on. You can actually pick out the dead characters in a Games Workshop novel by if they have a model or not. Do they have a model? Safe as houses, apart from extremely rare circumstances. Even when Eldrad was killed off, Games Workshop couldn't bear it, so they brought him back. That is the most damning part of this entire video. Games Workshop have killed off characters in the past, and they just can't seem to stand having them dead. So they bring them back. Eldrad being the biggest example of that. And they have killed off Yarrick, but I'm telling you now, dudes, I'm absolutely telling you, they will bring Yarrick back. They'll bring him back. Somehow, he will be back, and he'll be doing other things in the setting. He'll have a bionic leg or something. I'm not dead. I just got half my arm chewed off by an orc, and I was sent into the depths of space, but my sheer rage brought me back. The orcs revived me with their gestalt hatred of me. You know, okay, cool, right, and he's back again. You know what's going to happen. I know it's going to happen. No one should be surprised, okay? They do not have the conviction to stick by what they write. But the problem is, as a writer and things like that, if you do things like this, people who play your game, people who read about your game will stop caring. They'll back off and go, do you know what? This isn't really worth it. Should I buy this book? Probably not, because I know what's going to happen. I've stopped listening to every single 40k book I've been having on Audible about 40% of the way through. Every single one. Even the good ones. Even Hell's Reach. I was like, okay, I know what's going to happen here. Right? I then look up the cliff notes. Yep, exactly what I thought was going to happen. Happened. Awesome. Right? Most of the human characters die. The unnamed Space Marines who don't have models die. You know. Ugh. Here we go. Right? What was the other one I was listening to? It had a Grey Knight in it, and it was pretty cool. It had Katachan dudes in it. It was a very, very, very good book, actually, so far. But I stopped listening to it a while in because I was like, well, there's no stakes. I know Abaddon's not going to die. Right? I know Abaddon's not going to die. I know this Katachan character's not going to die. So why? There's no peril here. The only peril is to the human characters. All right, fine. But in terms of 40k, human characters are some of the most least interesting ones there. Even in books like Eisenhorn, okay, it can be unpredictable at times, but you know the main character lives. Why? Because he's telling you the story in past tense. From first person. Do you know what I'm saying? Like 40k is averse to stakes of any kind. They want to tell you stories about their models, but they're so terrified of devaluing their own models that they never actually tell you any stories that are worth listening to. That's my opinion anyway. What do you guys think? Do you think like me, and that most characters should either have some peril or actually just die in 40k on a regular basis? It would also give new characters room to breathe, room to come into the setting. Look at Abaddon the Despoiler. The amount of times I've campaigned for Abaddon to be killed off. Not by the Imperium, but by another, bigger, badder Chaos dude. Decimus, I'm looking at you. The reason why we never hear from these characters ever again is because we can't. We don't hear from Decimus ever again. We don't hear from Clone Fulgrim ever again, because if we did, they would step on the toes of the established characters, and we just can't have that, can we? Because you might want to sell another Abaddon the Despoiler, model. You might want to sell different things like that. Instead of giving us new things and not being like bankrupt in terms of creativity, you stick to the same old guard as you've always done. I think that's a crying shame. Make room for new characters, make room for new people, and watch their models fly off the shelves if you tell good stories with them, even if you kill them off in that exact same novel. How do I know? The Gaunt's Ghost models still sell, guys. They sell like hotcakes. All Horus Heresy characters fly off the shelves. Sanguinius, one of the most popular, Primarch models in the range. Come on, dude. They're out there. People will love to actually give you money for these characters that they've invested loads of time in. So let them. Let them. Have the balls to kill some characters off, and have the balls to stand by your creative decisions. Alright? Alright. I love you a long time. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. I'll speak to you tomorrow for some more hobby nightmares. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Speak to you soon. Have a good one. Bye now.